You know, Ed Rollins, we all remember back out in Iowa when Herman Dean made that victory speech, what people call the scream now, and I think a lot of people think that's what done him in that race out there. What do you make of this?
Howard Dean is a good friend of mine. Basically, that was sort of the end of his candidacy. I don't think this is the end of the Perry candidacy, but I think it's an image that's going to stay there a long time. And nobody has made a worse first impression than Governor Perry, who's been an extraordinary governor. He's been elected to office for 25 years, never defeated, 3 times elected governor of Texas against some very tough opponents. At the end of the day, his impressions here that the American public has and Republicans have, both in the combination of the debates and this speech, he's got to overcome. Someone's going to emerge as the alternative to Romney here and become the chaser. Now, whether that's Mr. Cain or Mr. Perry or one of the other candidates that's behind, we'll see. And Iowa will be probably the trigger out. But he's going to have to live with this. And what they all need to know is the old day of the casual speech in front of a New Hampshire audience or an Iowa audience is gone. Everything is now on a camera, on a telephone or something. And any attempt at humor, if you're not a comic, or any attempt at basically saying something stupid is going to be out there with you the rest of the campaign, and you've got to live with it.
What do you think, Liz?
You know, I think, again, I find this all pretty frustrating. This country faces huge, huge challenges. And, you know, frankly, watching a morning show like this one, where first we're talking about Herman Cain allegations, and then we're showing a YouTube mashup
well, we're covering the campaign, Liz.
Well, but the issues are what matters, Bob. And with all due respect, you know, the American people are out there afraid. They're afraid that the economy is going off a cliff. They're afraid that this president wants higher taxes and more spending and bigger government. And in the midst of all of that, I think that that's what we ought to be talking about. You know, last night in Texas, you had Herman Cain and Newt Gingrich have a very substantive exchange about the issues, and a very cordial exchange, but one that focused on how important it is to deal with the entitlement crisis, how important it is to create an environment where the private sector is actually going to be willing to invest again, how important it is to look at what's happening in Iraq. You know, Barack Obama likes to talk about what he inherited. He inherited a victory in Iraq. He inherited a AAA bond rating. And right now you've got a situation where, frankly, he is going down the wrong path on all of these issues. And I just got to imagine the people who are watching this morning and, you know, voters all across this country want to know who is going to help put this country back on the right track, not, you know, who was able to put together a mashup of, you know, clips out of a speech that Rick Perry gave on
Well,
YouTube.
I mean, I take your point, but I would also make the point that we in the media, it is not our job to make the campaign. That is up to the candidates. The candidates determine what the campaign is going to be out.
But you guys choose what you're going to cover,
and
Bob.
we show up and cover what's there.
Right.
So you and I can talk about this
all right, well,
for
we'll
a long
talk
time.
about it later on.
We have for a long time.